It began with silence, and then the world caught fire. It was the late 1930s. The air in Europe trembled with fear and whispers. Men in uniforms marched through streets filled with flags and pride. Radios crackled with speeches that promised greatness and vengeance. The Great War, what people once called the war to end all wars, had ended just 20 years ago. But humanity, it seemed, had learned nothing. Germany, humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles, was angry and broken. People starved, jobs vanished, and bitterness grew like a seed in dark soil. And from that soil rose a man named Adolf Hitler, a failed artist with a voice that could ignite a crowd. He promised glory, strength, and revenge. He blamed others, the Jews, the communists, the world, for Germany's suffering. And millions believed him. By 1933, Hitler had seized control. He silenced opposition, banned other parties, and turned Germany into a machine of power. He rebuilt the army, violating the very treaty that had tried to stop him. Tanks rolled, factories roared, and young men trained under swastika flags that waved like red storms. The world watched and hesitated. In 1938, Hitler took Austria. The Western powers protested, but did nothing. Then came Czechoslovakia. The Munich Agreement, a deal meant to keep peace, gave him part of it. Britain's Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, returned home waving a paper, declaring peace for our time. But peace was an illusion. On September 1st, 1939, as dawn broke, German troops crossed into Poland. Tanks thundered, planes screamed overhead, and the Blitzkrieg, lightning war, was born. Within weeks, Poland was crushed. Britain and France declared war, and the Second World War had begun. Europe burned again. In 1940, Hitler's armies swept across Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. The German war machine seemed unstoppable. In mere weeks, France, one of Europe's strongest powers, fell. The world gasped. But across the English Channel, a small island nation stood defiant: Britain. Led by Winston Churchill, the British vowed never to surrender. Then came the Battle of Britain. German bombers roared across the sky, dropping death upon London. Night after night, families huddled in shelters, praying as sirens wailed. But the Royal Air Force fought back. Spitfires and Hurricanes danced with Messerschmitts in the skies above, and slowly, against all odds, Britain endured. Hitler had found his first defeat. Frustrated, he turned east to the vast lands of the Soviet Union. But before that, he made a dark pact, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression agreement with Stalin. Both men smiled for cameras, but neither trusted the other. Meanwhile, far across the ocean, the United States watched. President Franklin D. Roosevelt wanted to stay out of Europe's war. America had suffered enough in the Great Depression, but deep down he knew they couldn't stay away forever. Then came 1941, the year everything changed. In June, Hitler broke his promise. He launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. 3 million German soldiers poured across the border, the world's largest invasion in history. Villages burned, cities fell, but the Russians refused to die quietly. They burned their own lands, starved their enemies, and fought for every inch. And then, December 7th, 1941, a date that would live in infamy. The rising sun struck without warning. Japanese planes swooped over Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, dropping torpedoes and bombs on American battleships. Within 2 hours, over 2,000 Americans were dead. The Pacific was in flames. The next day, the United States declared war on Japan, and soon after, Germany declared war on America. Now, the world was truly at war. From Europe to Africa, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, battles erupted on every front. America joined the fight with everything it had. Factories turned into arsenals, women filled the workplaces, and soldiers sailed across oceans. The world divided into two sides: the Allies, United States, Britain, Soviet Union, China, and others, and the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. In North Africa, General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, battled British forces under Montgomery. In the Atlantic, U-boats prowled beneath the waves, sinking ships in the dark. In the Pacific, the Japanese Empire spread rapidly. Philippines, Singapore, Burma, each falling under its might. But soon, America struck back. In 1942, the Battle of Midway became a turning point. American codebreakers intercepted Japanese plans. When the fleets met, 4 Japanese aircraft carriers were sunk. For the first time, Japan's advance was stopped. Back in Europe, Hitler faced the brutal Russian winter. His army reached Stalingrad, a city that became hell on earth. Streets turned into graveyards, every building a fortress. Soviet soldiers refused to retreat. "Not one step back," Stalin commanded. By February 1943, the German Sixth Army was surrounded. Starved, frozen, and broken, they surrendered. It was Hitler's greatest defeat. The tide was turning. That same year, the Allies invaded Italy, forcing Mussolini to flee and later face his grim end. The Axis dream was cracking. Then came D-Day, June 6, 1944. Under gray skies, thousands of ships crossed the English Channel. Soldiers from America, Britain, and Canada stormed the beaches of Normandy. Bullets rained, waves turned red, and the world held its breath. It was the largest invasion in history. By the end of that day, the Allies had a foothold in Europe. From there, they pushed forward, through France, through Belgium, toward Germany itself. Cities that once belonged to Hitler's empire fell one by one. In the east, the Soviet armies marched from the ruins of Stalingrad toward Berlin. By early 1945, the end was near. But the world had seen horrors it could never forget. In 1942, deep inside occupied Poland, the Nazis built concentration camps, places like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. Here, millions of Jews, along with gypsies, the disabled, and others deemed undesirable, were systematically murdered. Gas chambers, crematoriums, the Holocaust. 6 million lives, extinguished by hate. When Allied soldiers finally entered those camps in 1945, they found the unimaginable. Piles of shoes, ashes, bones, survivors too weak to stand. Humanity looked upon its darkest mirror. As the Allies closed in, Hitler hid in his bunker beneath Berlin. The city above him was in ruins. Tanks rolled through streets once filled with Nazi parades. Soviet shells exploded overhead. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler took his own life. A week later, Germany surrendered. Europe's war was over. But the Pacific still burned. Japan refused to surrender. Kamikaze pilots dove their planes into ships. On remote islands like Iwo Jima and Okinawa, American and Japanese soldiers fought to the death. Each step toward Japan cost thousands of lives. Then, on August 6, 1945, the sky over Hiroshima turned white. A single bomb, dropped from an American plane named Enola Gay, exploded with the power of the sun. In seconds, the city vanished. Thousands vaporized. Tens of thousands burned. 3 days later, a second bomb fell on Nagasaki. And then, silence. On August 15th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito spoke to his people. "We must endure the unendurable." Japan surrendered. The war was finally over. But peace did not come easily. The world was left in ruins. Cities turned to rubble. Nations divided. Millions dead or missing. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as superpowers, staring at each other across an iron curtain of distrust. The Cold War had begun even before the last bomb stopped echoing. Yet out of that darkness, humanity tried to rebuild. The United Nations was born, meant to prevent another world war. The Marshall Plan helped rebuild Europe. Science leapt forward. Jet engines, rockets, nuclear power, all born from the fires of war. But perhaps the greatest lesson was not about power. It was about people. The farmer who left his fields to fight in faraway lands. The nurse who worked through bombings to save a stranger. The child who survived the ashes and still found the strength to smile. World War II was not just battles and dates. It was the story of humanity at its best and worst. It was courage and cruelty, hope and horror, destruction and rebirth, all tangled in 6 terrible years. And even today, when you walk through the quiet fields of Normandy or the silent halls of Auschwitz, you can still feel the echoes, the whispers of those who lived, fought, and died so that the world might learn that peace is never free. Because once, not long ago, the world caught fire, and it took the courage of millions to bring back the light.